Good evening, everyone. Today we are very honored to invite a very prestigious, eminent monk, Khenpo Sodargye. Khenpo Sodargye has very deep accomplishments in Buddhism. He has visited many countries around the world, domestically at Beijing University, Renmin University, and many other places. He has also given lectures, but this is the first time at Beijing Normal University. So we are very honored to invite Khenpo to give us a lecture. Now, let's welcome him with applause.
Today, I'll have a simple exchange with everyone. I'm also very happy. This is my first time at Beijing Normal University. Today, I'd like to mainly talk with you about Buddhist life education. Buddhist life education, to be honest, I haven't really thought much about it. This topic, just now on the way here, I was thinking about what exactly to talk about, because this was apparently decided by the university. Sometimes when we go out to exchange with people, it's decided by the university side. Sometimes we ourselves casually propose some topics. There are cases like this. I think today, using this time to simply share some insights with everyone is not a bad idea. First, I'd like to say that for some of us students present here, what's the most crucial? I believe, whether at school or after graduating from school, the source of all learning is one's own mentor, one's own teacher. So no matter what kind of place you reach, you should always remember those who have transmitted knowledge to you, the source of wisdom, the kindness of these mentors. Just now, when Professor Tan and I were talking, he mentioned stories about some former mentors. At that time, I felt very moved, I can say. In our educational community, indeed, if a person has such gratitude toward their teacher, toward their mentor, this shows that their learning has a different effect on you. From the Buddhist perspective, there are also many eminent masters in the lineage. When they mention their guru's or teacher's name, they are very grateful, tears streaming down. Such stories abound. In today's society, many people regard teachers as a tool, like a machine for learning knowledge. After obtaining so much knowledge from the teacher, they fly far away, never even asking once about their teacher's health or life. Some have never had any contact again at all. Some, even when their own teacher has reached old age. For example, when they're sick or have difficulties in life, while the student has already become a particularly famous boss, they never have a heart of gratitude toward their teacher. So I believe in our current society. Indeed, no matter what status you have, first, our benefactors, from a worldly perspective, should be our parents. Without parents, perhaps when we first came into this world, we couldn't speak or walk. Even general worldly behaviors like eating we couldn't do. But relying on parents' long-term nurturing, they finally made us into adults. So parents' contributions to a child are indeed very difficult to imagine. This point everyone should know. Generally speaking, after parents have children, for basically 20 or 30 years, all their youth, manpower, and financial resources are all devoted to them. Even after some children have established families and careers, they still care. For example, I'm now in my 40s. My father passed away long ago. My mother is 80 years old. Every day she still cares about me. A while ago I went to Hong Kong for about 7 days. During those 7 days she said she couldn't reach me by phone every day and kept thinking of me. So I think mothers and parents throughout the world are all like this, though children may not care about them, though they are now already in their twilight years physically, they still have such loving hearts or caring hearts, very, very attached to their children, always keeping them in mind. So I think first, those we should repay kindness to or always think of are our parents. Each person should think about it. Many of us, after you already have capabilities in various aspects, now many people basically ignore their parents, even when parents are living particularly pitifully. Not even a phone call in a week or a month, no concern at all. Those with some means basically hire people to take care of them, while they themselves don't care. Indeed, this is a display of ingratitude, because in our current era, everyone uses the excuse that they're particularly busy not to care for the elderly and parents they should care for. So we should think. In Buddhism, we must also not forget our guru or our parents. Even according to Mahayana Buddhism, all living beings are those we should care for. But indeed, when this is mentioned now, many people probably have no interest at all, because this society is very realistic. As long as it benefits oneself, many people are utilitarian. They're willing to watch and learn, especially when talking about possession of commodities or some consumer value for you. People pay some attention. Besides this, truly valuable spiritual things. People in society now basically have no feeling, no concern, let alone now ethics and morality or related principles of religious faith. They even sneer at them. In such a society, I think first, each person, no matter how developed science is, how advanced society is, no matter how smart some of our university students are in their studies, actually, the basic methods and behaviors of being a person indeed also cannot be forgotten. If we forget them, then I think indeed our survival in this society has no great meaning. I often think that many university students now indeed don't lack knowledge, don't lack skills, don't lack diplomas. This point, especially in higher education institutions, should be very fully complete. But what do we lack? Moral education, faith education. Regarding moral education, everyone should also be clear. The knowledge learned in many of our textbooks, what's truly used in society, probably isn't even 20%. At school, learning this and that, I'm not saying schools are bad, nor that textbooks are bad, but indeed now, basic conduct in society, how to treat people and handle affairs, especially at school. Actually, this is a particularly important training platform. After leaving here, you must enter society. When entering society, first is how to interact between people, how you treat others, what attitude you have toward work, and so on. Many such matters. Even graduating from higher education, even some studying for master's degrees, doctoral degrees, later when they reach various departments or units, many unimaginable things often occur. Why? Because at school we need to provide character education. From Buddhism's perspective, if we can't be good people, let alone becoming a Buddha, there's even less to say about that. Similarly, if we don't do well in truly perfecting character education, then for us to become teachers or people at various levels of society is quite difficult. Therefore, I often think especially our Beijing Normal University has a very close relationship with national education. Many teachers here often participate in national textbook compilation work and many meetings. In this context, our current textbooks, especially I've looked through and read many articles from elementary school to university, including doctoral level. A considerable portion of the knowledge in these is, of course, very precious. This is beyond doubt. But there's also a need for many additions of some true principles regarding character education. I'm thinking that such character education is actually very meaningful for both students and teachers. This time I went to several schools in Hong Kong, including HKUST and others. Some of their educational methods are also worth learning from, especially in some of their schools, whether regarding Buddhism or other religions. When there's some faith, they all feel this is very reliable because they at least have a faith. Regarding good has good rewards, evil has evil consequences. They won't act recklessly. At least there should be some constraints in their hearts. Moreover, no matter which department, they don't particularly reject it. The reason for this, actually many of our educational concepts aren't clear. if we get our educational concepts clear. Some people might think, for example, what we're talking about today is Buddhist life education. So does Buddhism and our educational philosophy go in opposite directions? Will there be a push in contrary directions? Absolutely not. I myself have also contemplated this principle for a long time. I often think, for example, in our Buddhism, the most basic behavior is the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, this is at the very beginning for a Buddhist. Actually, if you take refuge in the 3 jewels, will it cause students or teachers who take refuge to become superstitious? In principle, will it harm them? Actually, absolutely not. Why do I say this? Because the so-called Buddha is actually not a god. If he were a ghost, a god, or something that doesn't exist in the world at all, if we were to harden, virtualize it in our minds, then create a virtual world or virtual Buddha, such a practice would be unreasonable. Actually, the Buddha should be from more than 2,500 years ago in India, including Nepal. The place where he was born is now within Nepal's borders. This is called a world intangible cultural heritage. The entire world commonly recognizes that the Buddha was born here. Later, he assumed the royal throne, then renounced it and became a monk. After becoming a monk, 6 years of ascetic practice, finally attaining enlightenment at Vajrasana in India. Then at Deer Park in India, he turned the Dharma wheel and taught the Dharma. After proclaiming 84,000 teachings, he later manifested nirvana completely in our human history, just like Jung and Plato in the past, a real figure who appeared there. And all the teachings he spoke were left to our world. Now, including in the East and West, many intellectuals and writers research them. In the research process, no errors have been found. Such a Buddha, actually, the meaning of Buddha, many of you present should know, from Sanskrit it means enlightened one. Whether it's political thought or economic thought, we humans need enlightenment. So what does taking refuge in Buddha mean? It means I want to rely on the enlightened one. Actually, our teachers, our professors, or any person in the world with the highest wisdom, we call them enlightened ones. So what you call taking refuge in Buddha means I want to rely on the enlightened one. Does this conflict or not? I think it shouldn't conflict. Second, we say taking refuge in Dharma. What does taking refuge in Dharma mean? The truth proclaimed by the Buddha, the truth of leaving suffering and attaining happiness. This truth, in textual form, is called the Tripitaka. In the human mind, this is called the 3 trainings of precepts, concentration, and wisdom. In written form, it's the Tripitaka of sutras, Vinaya, and treatises. In terms of our behavior, this is what anyone needs. With precepts, you can produce concentration. With concentration, you can produce wisdom. So what does precepts mean? Some people are a bit afraid when precepts are mentioned. Buddhism's precepts have so many rules. Actually, it's not just Buddhism. Even for an elementary school student, there's an elementary student handbook. Middle school students have middle school handbooks. Then universities have university discipline. Any relatively standardized and formal group has its discipline. So I think precepts are a kind of behavioral code that regulates people's conduct. This kind of method is called precepts. So what is concentration? No matter what we do, if your mood hasn't stabilized, if you're always in a state of restlessness or distraction, nothing can be accomplished. Including if you want to do research or be a teacher, be a student, your mood must be stable. If your mood is particularly manic or somewhat confused, then no one can accept it. So this is called so-called concentration. Having such regulated behavior and a stable mood, only then can you research, accept or reject, or make judgments with wisdom. People without wisdom, I think many intellectuals intellectuals. Why some cannot become intellectuals is because they lack wisdom. So the content of Buddhism's Dharma is all precepts, concentration, and wisdom, or we can say humanity's essential wisdom and truth. In the final analysis, I believe the so-called Buddha is called the enlightened one. This point is not me, a Buddhist here boasting. In the world, like Einstein, including German philosopher Nietzsche, they all unanimously said in different papers that in the world, what can truly cooperate with science equally, what can truly answer scientific questions is Buddhism, is Buddha. This is very clear in many writings. So scientists acknowledge Buddha is the highest enlightened one, or that his wisdom can withstand any scientific scrutiny. I think the so-called Buddha is not what's called in superstition a ghost or god, or can be compared with some folks' sayings. Absolutely cannot. In this way, taking refuge in Buddha can be said. Taking refuge in Dharma can be said. Dharma is truth. Buddha is the enlightened one. So what is Sangha? Taking refuge in Sangha, we follow the truth seekers. That is to say, the Buddha's true teachings, those willing to practice them, willing to study them, willing to continually pursue them. Such people are called Sangha. Taking refuge in Sangha is like this. So taking refuge in such virtuous ones, actually logically or in terms of truth, should be something everyone can acknowledge. I think sometimes many of our thoughts and morals, actually some logic in Buddhism, everyone can mutually understand. When understanding in this way, I often think taking refuge in the three jewels, having faith in the three jewels, for each person should have no harm. Moreover, in our Buddhism, there are many things. For example, the 3 refuges and 5 precepts, or the 5 precepts, or the 10 virtues. The 10 virtues in Buddhism, these are basic principles, basic precepts. Actually, if many people have these 10 virtues, basically constraining a person's behavior, practicing the 10 virtuous actions, rejecting the 10 non-virtuous actions. So the 10 non-virtuous actions, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, these 3 physical non-virtuous actions regarding speech, not speaking lies, not speaking harsh words, not speaking divisive words, not speaking frivolous talk, these 4. In the mind, greed, anger, and wrong views. Greed, anger, and ignorance, we can say. Let's think about this. Do ordinary worldly people need these? Can they do these things? I often think it's not only Buddhists, it's best if everyone doesn't violate these. Moreover, any leader, teacher, or student in our world, if they don't commit these, they should be the most qualified people. For example, generally killing in the world, mainly killing people, killing in the 5 precepts, of course, killing people, whether for society or for individuals, won't have any good prospects. As long as one is human, they will definitely control various bad habits of killing, including now in some of our laws. Adults cannot be killed, but abortion is permitted. But this is a scope of knowledge defined by humans. Otherwise, people can be killed when small, but not when big. From a logical perspective, this is very difficult to justify. Why can people be killed when small, but not when grown up? Killing when grown results in death penalty, but killing when small is acceptable. There's no such reasoning. So although now in China, such phenomena, including abortion, reportedly over 13 million per year, it's very serious. But actually, killing, in terms of human law, is a very frightening behavior. Therefore, Buddhism first prohibits killing, then stealing. Everyone knows stealing things in the world should be the most inferior and worst. Any person with morality and knowledge will greatly reject the act of stealing. Then sexual misconduct. Everyone knows if you want family harmony to truly live very happily and for people to be very pure, then sexual misconduct, not just now, but in ancient times too, it was said, of all evils, sexual misconduct is foremost. Of all virtues, filial piety is first. The ancients also had such sayings. So all evil karma is created through sexual misconduct. These are the three basic physical precepts mentioned in Buddhism. If these three are not done, I think at least families will live in harmony. Then regarding our speech, not speaking lies, so-called lying means telling falsehoods. In today's world, there are also many instances, including our media and advertisements. Many can be said to have very false language. Originally, this isn't even a good thing, but once advertised, once spoken, from 1 to 10, from 10 to 100, eventually it harms many people's physical health, psychology, etc. Much of this is also lying. Actually, lies and false language harm many people, including ourselves. Once bitten by a snake, one will be afraid of ropes for 10 years. Once you've been deceived by someone, from then on you won't trust them. So in Buddhism we say, not speaking lies is reasonable. First, second, speaking harsh words. Everyone knows harsh words, and cursing people are very frightening. Generally speaking, why are some families particularly harmonious and happy? Basically, family members don't curse each other all day. If in a home or any collective, harsh cursing often occurs, such a life is particularly painful. Everyone knows. So not cursing should be a kind of enjoyment and happiness in life. Then divisive speech, sowing discord. Whether between units, between teachers and students, or between departments, now there are many conflicts created by many people's divisive speech. So divisive speech is also very frightening. Also, there's something called frivolous talk, meaningless nonsense without any substance. Everyone knows, sometimes when we watch news or TV, some of what's said has no practical meaning for your life philosophy. It's just to pass your time. Including now, some individual pop stars and the songs they sing are also just causes of distraction. Truly, even if you've memorized the lyrics, what meaning does it have for your life? Yet many people go crazy over it. When one person sings, "Wow," everyone rushes forward and starts crowding. If you truly have wisdom and really search for why they're so happy, does he sing that well? Or are the lyrics that good? Not necessarily. So we humans now are in an era like being under an intoxicating drug. Era by era, there are different sensations. These sensations don't need to have profound reasons. It's just that when people's mentality encounters a bit of stimulation, you immediately recognize it and start promoting it. There's such a thing. So what I just mentioned in our Buddhism, the 4 non-virtuous actions of speech are also like this. Everyone should analyze this carefully. Finally, mentally, anger and greed. Everyone knows anger. When anger arises in the mind, once the mind produces anger, all previous merit and contributions are completely destroyed. We all know in our Buddhism, if a monastic often loses their temper and generates anger, this monastic won't be good. Whether teacher or student, if a person is often angry and like this, although they may be very complete in other merits, because of this point, their contributions will be discounted. So anger, on one hand, from Buddhism's perspective, one instant of anger destroys many eons of merit. But not to mention worldly people also. First, when seeing a person with a bad temper, everyone is particularly afraid of them, even afraid to speak to them, often looking at their face to see if they're unhappy today. If unhappy, they simply don't talk to them. There are such situations. This is anger. Second is greed. Everyone knows. Some are greedy for wealth, some for money, some for various worldly things that shouldn't be craved, because now our society is particularly greedy for status, greedy for reputation. Everyone wants to obtain everything for themselves. So now our society is not like the past. There was much material scarcity. Basically, except for extremely few remote rural areas, there is none. But do people have a sense of satisfaction? Indeed, compared to before, there's no sense of satisfaction. Why? Because now many people always feel, oh, I want to buy a house, buy a car, buy this and that, so much. If they have a car, 1 house isn't enough, need 2. 2 aren't enough, need 3. Maybe having them in China isn't enough, buy one in Canada. Canada isn't enough, maybe buy one in Australia too. So our greed can never be filled, it's very frightening. This is one kind of greed. Finally, there's something called wrong views, rejecting or being prejudiced against truth. Originally, the law of karma, good has good rewards, evil has evil consequences. This is a very correct concept, but we don't believe it. Originally, above is heaven, below is hell. Actually, this is a very profound principle. Recently, I've seen many Western scientists, their views on heaven, hell, their many concepts about past and future lives. But now, due to various reasons, many people regarding such matters, including regarding their own past and future lives, some are in doubt, some fundamentally don't acknowledge it and reject it. Some are half believing and half doubting. Some, although they somewhat believe, think it's probably maybe so. This is called reasonable doubt. It may exist, but you don't care. This kind of view is called wrong view. This wrong view is now spreading throughout the entire world. This is very frightening. Sometimes I communicate with many teachers and students, and in the communication process, I also learn much knowledge. Indeed, regarding life's truths, they far exceed us monastics. Many teachers and students care about current society and their understanding of natural science and social science. In these aspects, we also learn much from them. But in certain aspects, in my heart, there's a very regretful feeling that spontaneously arises. Why? Because humans clearly and absolutely have past and future lives, but many people don't believe it. Some people, including some of our few Buddhists, perhaps orally won't say past and future lives don't exist, but their actions, basically, besides present life, people who consider the next life are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, extremely few. Seeing this point, sometimes I wonder whether humanity truly has wisdom or not, because we don't make any preparation for the future's long years. Just constantly busying ourselves with these few decades matters, constantly pursuing only this. I find this very regrettable. So sometimes I say people particularly blindly pursue this life's happiness, money, and fame. Of course, this is also a trend of life. Many people say there's no way, it's necessary, but what we need even more is, what about the next life? Of course, there are some who care about our morality and faith, who care about these aspects. But this care also remains at the level of research. Truly practicing, I'm afraid there's also none. Especially now, many scientists and writers acknowledge Buddhist faith and the principle that good has good rewards, evil has evil consequences. They acknowledge this, but merely acknowledging isn't enough. They don't practice. For example, like Einstein, from many of his articles we can see he would definitely acknowledge Buddhism's view of emptiness in this regard. Why is it said that Buddhism and science now, especially in quantum mechanics, can indeed keep up? I myself think, although my research isn't very thorough, I've also made some understanding of topics in other religions. For example, simply speaking, like in quantum mechanics analyzing emptiness, many physicists analyze, and the conclusion they reach is very astonishing, because all phenomena in the end, besides a so-called energy, there's nothing. A while ago in Hong Kong, some people asked me, the principle of form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form, is a bit hard to understand. Later I told them, using physics molecules and quarks as an analogy, I think those present may have also delved into this. We all learned this in middle school, our analysis of all phenomena, from molecules to atoms, finally to quarks. Later, scientists discovered subquarks, but ultimately the so-called most minute energy. Is this energy each phenomenon or not? It should be each phenomenon. This phenomenon and emptiness are the same. We can say this. This table is actually a kind of energy. According to physics, if you ask Einstein, his final conclusion should be, because we can't obtain it, he gradually analyzes all phenomena, and in the end, only an energy remains. If it's this energy, is it the table or not? He believes it is. In this case, besides energy, is there a table? No. So is the table energy? It is energy. At this time, many of us don't understand the Heart Sutras. Form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is not different from energy. Energy is not different from form. We can say this. We can also say table is not different from form. Form is emptiness. That is to say, table is energy. Energy is table. Energy is not different from table. Table is not different from energy. This kind of reasoning, physicists, I think, should be able to acknowledge. If you acknowledge and think about it, the Buddha's wisdom from over 2,500 years ago and the physical thought of the view of emptiness later in the 20th century, people considered this an astonishing discovery. At this time, we think about it. Many wise people present here previously had very detailed consideration in this regard. We should be able to say the Buddha's wisdom is indeed very superior. This is not because I study Buddhism, I've taken refuge in Buddha, and some of you are Buddhists, some are non-Buddhists, but this doesn't matter. We're not here exchanging between Buddhists and Buddhists. Can such wisdom in human history today be acknowledged by everyone? These truths he spoke can be said to pervade all our knowledge, including astronomy, medicine, and various worldly disciplines. We can say it's all-encompassing. All disciplines can be included. Moreover, the emptiness the Buddha spoke of, we absolutely cannot understand it as simply emptiness, like there's nothing in this bowl. This is called emptiness. This means the principle of emptiness isn't understood. It has its inconceivable phenomena. We can call this dependent origination emptiness. For example, the zero in mathematics, you absolutely cannot think it's something that doesn't exist at all. If you think it's something that doesn't exist at all, then any number, if you multiply by zero, in the end, it vanishes without a trace. If any number just adds a zero or subtracts a zero, there's no change. Why is it that the same zero plays such different roles? After 1, adding thousands becomes 1,000. If it had no effect at all, then 1 0 wouldn't play any role. 2, 3, 4. When adding 4 zeros, it becomes 10,000. Why? This is a mystery in mathematics. Emptiness also has a similar reasoning method. We then know that Buddhism, regarding emptiness, or regarding human principles, indeed also has very deep principles for us to learn. Actually, sometimes in schools now, many young people, adolescents, I think if they understand Buddhism's basic principles, not to mention the next life, just in this life, they may have many benefits, because now some university students, perhaps at first, feel that life is particularly happy and perfect. When it comes to normal reality, they feel it's not like this. It hasn't met their wishes, especially at universities now. Often in some news, incidents of jumping from buildings to commit suicide are also becoming more and more frequent. When a suicide by jumping occurs, higher authorities issue a directive about it. Or if there's a car accident, they issue a directive about it. Actually, if we integrate everyone's recognition or adjust their understanding, I think this is best. For example, at the beginning, as a so-called adolescent, you should know what kind of world we have now. You shouldn't think it's quite sweet. You should know that it's suffering. Suffering predominates. You should be mentally prepared. In such a time, you realize that your wealth, your love, any of your affairs, they won't all be 100% smooth and successful. If you have this in your mind, when you're walking, you have advanced preparation. Others tell you the road ahead is winding and curvy. You shouldn't think it's flat and straight. Otherwise, you'll be disappointed at the time. And after several disappointments, finally despair. After despair, they'll choose suicide. Originally, some philosophers also said so-called suicide. When a person's despair of living far exceeds the terror of death, they choose suicide. In this case, it's very unworthy. So if we in the world indeed regard money or our emotions not as life's happiest and most perfect things, when you encounter these in life, you'll have the ability to counteract them. Previously, in Han Chinese Buddhist circles, there was someone called Master Wood. Master Wood's learning was quite high. Once, 3 of his disciples came before him and said, "Doesn't Buddhism say it can resolve suffering? But after we studied Buddhism, actually, we haven't completely resolved suffering. Why is this?" The Master said, "Actually, our Buddhism should be about understanding the source of suffering. It's not that after you study, you immediately eradicate it, then recognize the source of suffering." Later, these 3 young people didn't quite agree with the Master's view. Then the Master asked in return, "So what do you think is the cause of greatest happiness in the world?" One person said, "With fame, everything is happiness. Famous people I see are all particularly happy." Then one person said, "As long as there's love and it goes smoothly, this is the happiest." One person said, "As long as I have wealth and money, I am very happy." Later, the Master said in very simple words, "In our daily life, we clearly see that famous people are also not happy. Quite many are suffering. People with love, there are also those particularly suffering. People with wealth are also particularly suffering. Why? he asked them. At that time, when these three truly examined their hearts, oh, actually, it truly is so. Actually, they're not truly causes of happiness. So at this time, I also remind everyone, I often say this, so-called happiness, everyone wishes to seek happiness. But this happiness, actually, its fundamental cause is in one's own mind, external, your partner, your money, your fame, your status. Do they play a role in your happiness? There's a role as external conditions. Relying on them, indeed, sometimes you can temporarily obtain some happiness, temporarily obtain some well-being. But they are, after all, external conditions. Why? Because if there's happiness in the mind, even without these external things, money, fame, etc., I can completely enjoy a very happy life. If I don't have the inner primary cause of happiness, even if all your external things are complete, you're still not happy. So now many of our young people place all happiness. Some people think, if I have money, I'll definitely be happy. They desperately chase it, always wanting to get rich, get rich. As a result, perhaps some people truly have merit and get rich. After getting rich, are you happy? No. At first, when you have money for 2 or 3 days, you may have a bit of feeling. Then, never any feeling again. Other things, including your emotions and so on. Indeed, it's like this. So many adolescents should learn hard in terms of knowledge. For example, Buddhism teaches the Four Dharma Seals. The Four Dharma Seals are very important. The first talks about all contaminated things are suffering, just as I mentioned. In our world, whether it's the external world or including us humans, suffering predominates in all. You shouldn't think that perhaps happiness is the majority. Otherwise, you can't obtain it in this world. For example, you get married, thinking you'll probably be particularly happy. When will I get married? I hear some university students, when I go to some schools, their two main questions are, one is wanting to find good work, the other is finding a good partner. Besides this, there's nothing else to think about. Many questions are basically like this. This is also understood. But what is it about their problem? Mainly, their goal is thinking that with very good work, with a very good family, they should be happy. Not necessarily. If you don't have true inner perseverance, you may have a family and a career, but if you as a person don't fit in, if you're particularly withdrawn, plus you only have learning, are a bookworm without true moral concepts, then in any setting, any department, you'll still ultimately be very miserable. So all contaminated things are suffering. All contaminated phenomena are completely of the nature of suffering. Occasionally there's some happiness, but this is unstable. This is the first of the Four Dharma Seals. The second is called all compounded things are impermanent. We should know that everything in this world, including status, wealth, including our youth, all phenomena in the world are completely impermanent. This is very important. Many scientists and research scholars simply say on the surface that all phenomena are impermanent. They can say it, but they've never practiced it. Without practicing, when impermanence appears, they themselves can't face it. How was Einstein when he died? How was Newton when he died? How was Galileo when he died? Exactly the same as ordinary people, because they never practiced impermanence. But practitioners, indeed I'm not praising myself and disparaging others, truly some Buddhist practitioners, even a practitioner whose learning isn't very high because they've practiced impermanence, when they truly get cancer or receive critical condition notice at a hospital, at that time they'll bravely face it. This is the great difference between practice and learning. So if all phenomena are impermanent, all things are impermanent, including our own age, family. If you have a concept of impermanence for all affairs, perhaps on your life's journey, when you encounter many unsafe things, you can also be philosophical. All phenomena are impermanent. It's not necessarily as I imagine. Everything changes, everything changes. When causes and conditions converge, everything will change. You'll look on the bright side. In Buddhism, this is very crucial. The second, all compounded things are impermanent. Third, all phenomena know self-existence. Each of us pursues thinking that to protect ourselves, we're self-centered. Now, especially many students are particularly selfish. Besides themselves, they don't care about classmates, don't care about teachers, don't care about society, don't care about their own families. They themselves are completely in a state of egoism and hedonism. Such a state, in extremely few schools, it's like this. But our Beijing Normal University, nationally speaking, should have a very good academic academic atmosphere. Some of those from our Beijing Normal University who previously studied here, I asked, "What's your deepest impression of Beijing Normal University?" She said, she's a female Buddhist friend. "When I was at Beijing Normal University, nothing else special, but many girls at our Beijing Normal University don't like to dress up. Relatively plain, but others feel we're relatively simple and honest. Indeed, this is a school's academic atmosphere. Originally, I also previously studied at a local small normal school, but I didn't finish. I ran away and became a monk. Actually, at that small normal school, what was my greatest suffering? It was changing clothes once a week. At that time, we came from the countryside, from some remote places. I only had 2 sets of clothes. This week I'd wash this one, next week I'd have to change back. This was my greatest suffering, because I only had these 2 sets. Others, those with money, we had no idea how many sets of clothes they had, changing again and again. So I myself have some impressions at that time very much, including when I first came, our teacher held a class meeting. At that time, my Chinese was also spoken particularly poorly. That teacher called on each student to say something. I sat in the middle, then the teacher asked me to speak. When I spoke, I thought I was using my Mandarin. Later, our teacher said, "You'd better not speak your pastoral areas Tibetan. Use Chinese to tell me." The teacher perhaps used relatively sarcastic language, but indeed because in elementary school, we basically never encountered Han Chinese Mandarin teachers. In middle school, we encountered some, but we learned particularly poorly, playing every day, not studying. When we got to normal school, it was particularly, including at that time, some of our classmates were saying their impression of me was that my clothes had patches on them. So this is the deepest impression in their memory. Some classmates looked down on me and often talked about me. I myself still have relatively deep impressions. Besides this, many impressions now are gone. But I think for you here, the conditions and learning compared to places like ours are worlds apart. But many people's aspiration for truth, I think many people's pursuit of learning should be quite high. Nothing like our places at all. So in Buddhism itself, the concept of no self is very important. Of course, the concept of no self is relatively deep. When explaining it, some people may ask, if there's no self, how can one go to hell? How can one ascend to heaven? This is a very simple matter we need to analyze. Didn't I just say? We said the table is energy. Energy is the table. You can't say, if this table is energy, then how can you place a cup on energy? You can't run to the ultimate nature and tell me. So emptiness, in the ultimate, in the true nature of phenomena, it's empty. But in appearance, it's absolutely not empty. Physics is also like this. In its appearance, this bottle should exist as a whole. They won't say, this is molecules, this is atoms, this is nuclei. So in Buddhism, in any context where things are empty, where things are not empty, this must be clearly distinguished. When you finally analyze all phenomena, the so-called self-existence is empty. When you truly realize the state where self-existence is empty, this is called nirvana. Ultimately, this kind of happiness, this happiness that's not like when we now buy a house. Ah, I'm so happy. The first day in the new house, you may roll around sleeping. Wow, I have a house. After 2 or 3 days, there's no feeling. When you buy a good car, wow, at first I'm particularly happy. The next day, also no feeling. All phenomena are contaminated, including staying at a hotel. When you first enter, wow, so comfortable. After a while, there's no feeling. All worldly contaminated phenomena, including your worldly friends. Other feelings are also like this. At first, this person may forever have my most joyful, happiest condition. But in the end, not only do you not obtain any happiness, but it also adds much, much suffering. Finally, they're considered a thorn in their eye. There are also such situations. So I often think that in our current social education, of course, you're not completely Buddhist, not completely monastic, but many adolescents, if some principles from Buddhism could be made understandable to them in other ways, you don't need to talk about Buddhism. Don't need to say you must have faith, you must take refuge. These we don't need to say at school. But at school, we should have a positive understanding of truth. This is very necessary. If you don't acknowledge acknowledge any truth and also reject it, then this is not truly materialism or dialectical thought. It absolutely cannot be established. Therefore, many of us present here, including some students in the future, whether cultivating students or in caring for society now, many people only care about themselves, not about people around them. Therefore, in our world, many incidents occur, including many events like Little Yueyu incident. Actually, it may not necessarily explain much. Among so many of us, one or two such incidents occur. I think this is also natural. But on the other hand, it's also related to our overall quality or each person's own moral cultivation. There's still a certain connection, so-called cultivation. You need to understand such principles, just like the Analects, Diziguite, or some principles in Confucian thought. After you understand them, gradually practice them, you need to cultivate. For cause, if you just don't maintain them, it won't work. Maintenance is needed. So at school, real Confucian thought and Buddhist thought now should become a powerful national culture. I think Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, these three are traditional culture. In ancient times, during the Tang dynasty, what kind of protection everyone knows about the master Xuanzang Tang? A while ago in the news, wasn't it mentioned that China allocated to India's Nalanda monastery $1 million US? Why? Because Nalanda Monastery, between the 5th and 12th centuries, was one of the world's earliest universities. Starting from 2007, the Indian government prepared to restore it because in the Buddhist world, this is the center of traditional culture and Buddhist culture, the earliest, particularly glorious university, including at that time, China's Xuanzang Tang and others studied there and after graduating in Chinese human history and culture left indelible contributions. India is now preparing to build Nalanda University. Of course, the current Nalanda University is like modernized, with also many Buddhist classrooms inside. Why do most people in humanity know about these things, including in our Tibetan Buddhism? Many great wise ones all came from Nalanda Monastery. Going there to study at Nalanda Monastery and bringing back these truths. These truths previously, in our large and small social groups, had a certain influence. But later, during the Cultural Revolution, including our Confucian thought, indeed traditional culture was discarded. Buddhism and Taoism, Confucianism and Taoism were all discarded, yet often other countries and other ethnic groups use them very well. In this case, who are the victims? The victims are many adults and young people. Now, each of us, of course, one person's ability is limited, but I think each person should still, within the scope of their ability, on one hand, rescue their own ethnic cultural tradition. On the other hand, you yourself should in the future, including at different higher education institutions, you'll definitely become teachers later. At this time, can many classmates truly play a role? Not just making a living for yourself, just getting a job. That's enough. In that case, regarding teachers' kindness, I think we haven't repaid their kindness. Teachers work hard day and night cultivating you, and what's their purpose? On one hand, of course, they themselves have a responsibility, but on the other hand, indeed for society and humanity, including yourself, there's still a responsibility to contribute a certain amount, making a contribution to society. This is the purpose. So I think Buddhism's true life education lies in education of goodness, should be education of truth. Over many years, I can be considered as having myself invested relatively much time in research. In the research process, I've found that Buddhist education is indeed indispensable for current intellectual youth. It must be used in life. When used in life, this life shouldn't be for oneself. It should be for benefiting the group. Benefiting the group is the spirit of our Mahayana Buddhism and also our current very noble moral cultivation. All right, that's all I have for you today.